Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the PM Hour. That's the Pan-African Millennial Hour. I'm Patrick.
I'm Tasha.
I'm Terry.
Hey there, beautiful people. This is Garrett.
All right, y'all. And what I want to talk about right now is, you guys know John Lewis passed away in this week. He had his funeral. And a lot of people are talking about this thing with Bill Clinton. I just want to play that for you guys real quick, what Bill Clinton said, and we could talk about it afterwards.
Second, nearly 20 years later, when he was 23, the youngest speaker and the last speaker at the March on Washington, when he gave a great speech urging people to take to the streets across the South to seize the chance to finally end racism. And he listened to people that he knew had the same goal, say, well, we have to be careful how we say this because we're trying to get converts, not more adversaries. Just 3 years later, he lost the leadership of SNCC to Stokely Carmichael because he said, you know, it was a pretty good job for a guy that young and come from Troy, Alabama. It must have been painful to lose, but he showed as a young man there are some things that you cannot do to hang on to a position, because if you do them, you won't be who you are anymore. And I say there were 2 or 3 years there where the movement went a little bit too far towards Stokely, but in the end, John Lewis prevailed. We're here today because he had the kind of character he showed when he lost an election.
So that's the part I wanted to talk about, how he was comparing Stokely Carmichael to John Lewis, and the part he talked about the kind of character you have to have, right? The kind of character that you as a black person need to admire and need to look up towards. So what do you think about that?
I got a lot to say about this because, I, in a lot of my readings and stuff, I always like to think about the constant struggle of black people having this country between the nationalist thinking and the integrationist thinking. Not to go into a big thing, but people have to know the moral of the story between what happened when Malcolm X and Martin Luther King in a time period that happened at that time. You have to understand, there was a time period at that time, there was two ideals fighting to see what was going to lead the black community forward. Were black people going to pick up a nationalist thinking, or were they going to pick up an integrationist thinking? Now, what happened? All the integrationists started getting killed. Malcolm, Huey Newton, the Black Panther destroyed. What started happening to the integrationists? They started getting book deals and position signings and grants and everything. And what better to have a martyr like Martin Luther King to die so that the ideals stick into the minds of African Americans. So fast forward today, we're still living under the mind frame of the integrationist. Bill Clinton just basically highlighted the fears of what white men still see black people. They don't want to think nationalistically. That's the last thing they want. Even till today, that man basically to me just said, do not think about yourselves. No, think about integration. You should be trying to work on equality. Don't think about yourself. Think about trying to unify while every other race get to think in a nationalistic sense. That is insulting for him just said that. You bring up Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael, for those who don't know, he was supposed to be next. He was supposed to be the third. After Marcus Garvey, after Malcolm X, it was supposed to be Stokely Carmichael next, as far as the nationalistic type of thinking. I didn't count Martin Luther King, but he was not a nationalistic thinker. He was an integrationist. But imagine if you're white and you see these two ideals coming along. You don't want a nationalist ideal to take root. Why? Because what were the nationalists talking about? Our own land, our own money, our own companies, our own everything. They're excluding them out. They did not want that. And of course, they didn't want to be with the integrationists either. They didn't want black people living in their neighborhoods and sitting in them restaurants. But for them, it was the lesser of two evils. So they're still telling you that's the side that they chose. That nationally, don't think about yourself, black people. Think about the integrationists.
Well, it also speaks to also something else that we talked about in our previous conversations. We talked about the fact that, again, to what he's saying, look at the type of person that he says and what he's actually trying to get at. They try to view the views of people like Malcolm X as violent. But can anyone really say how many people Malcolm X killed? Can anyone ever say how many people Malcolm X have actually got killed? Like, how many planned killings did Malcolm X have? You know what I'm saying? So the thing is this. We have to kind of look at, again, to what my brother is saying, we have to look at the same sense of this type of white fear that they have. And they always want to try to pinpoint the people that speak the most close to what their community should be doing and what our community should be going forward. They always view these ones as the violent ones. So again, as we look at forward and we look at what they're coming out of their mouths and what they're saying and what they try to pinpoint to us, the people that are more dedicated are seen as violent. Well, why are they seen more violent? Can we really sit here and ask these kind of questions? Can we really be obvious? A person doesn't have no body count. You know what I'm saying? He ain't got no body count. Man don't got nothing underneath his belt, but he's seen as violent. So again, why is it that we need to not listen to these so-called violence, quote, on each end, but we want to listen to these ones that
because that's what they want us to think. That's how they want us to think, right?
So is it safe to say that they wanted us to follow people that's non-violent, to say?
Yeah.
That's why they wanted us to follow the Martin Luther King type people, is because they are more like, weak-willed, I guess to say, because they were more likely to get, paid off, I guess, to be more of the white people's pocket, because they know they could follow them people more, the white man, because they know they could be manipulated into those type of people.
Yeah. Yes.
Beats them like Malcolm X, because he was more stronger, like he know what they were doing, and he's like, okay, no, I'm not gonna follow you. I see you. I know what you are doing, and I'm going to build up a more stronger population, because we're not going to do and follow as what you say.
Yes.
So that's basically what it is.
If you're asking a question, that's absolutely
kind
it.
of
If
my
you're asking a question,
what
absolutely.
I'm seeing and what I'm hearing.
Well, let me.
That's right.
Yeah, if you're saying that's absolutely what it is, because when they see the nationalist thinkers, they're immovable. They're an immovable object. You're right. They do see them. They do see white people and the white structure and white supremacy for exactly what it is. And they have a solution of how to work against that or remove themselves from the domination of white supremacy. The integrationist or the light thinker or the peaceful people, you can't argue with wanting world peace. Who wouldn't want that? What race did anybody want that? That's their argument. That's how you throw in the face of the nationalist thinker. We should all be thinking about one another and we should be one race. That's absolutely true. But that's not reality. They want us to think that they want black people to live in this certain altered reality where we should be the nice guys and to think to reach out when we're the most victimized.
You got to play the game.
Where that's manipulation in that regard. There's manipulation in that regard. And yes, you're right. That's exactly what they want. So the white man fears that.
So, and my other question is, I know it might be just, can I go a little bit off topic as far as like with the Malcolm X situation? Yeah. He wasn't really like in the pocket of Islam. He was more like in the pocket of
what?
Where was he in? He was in
Nation of Islam.
Nation of Islam. That's where he was, because he was blinded by them.
Yeah.
But when he really seen where they was all about, that's where he wanted to come out, right? Yeah. And he was
they
like,
plotted against him.
Right, exactly. So he was more like, okay, I don't want to be about this because this is more of like corrupt. Yeah. So then when he wanted to come about that, and that's where they basically wanted to kill him. Yeah. Because he was calling like the white people like the white devils, this and that, which he knew that's what they were also. Mm-hmm. So then when all that came about, and then they did, I guess, kill him however, that's just what they did, whether it was the Nation of Islam or the white people plotted or the FBI killed him, whatever, so be it. But, my point is that the long story short of all of that, all or both of them plotted just against these two men to die, because it was just about like when you have, or you kind of see where I'm going with this?
Yeah. Okay. That's what I want to add to what you're saying, how you were saying they plotted both against them. I think part of what I want to say you know, and to tie it back into the Bill Clinton thing, is how, you know, this is a speech for somebody's funeral. And he took that time to sort of like bring politics into it. And then also, in a time like this, when we're having such racial
divide,
but specifically we're focused on, you know, the plight of African Americans and the plight of Black people, right? And how Black Lives Matter. And he took that time to say, hey, also, I think that you need to err on the side of caution and follow this thing right here. Like, you're telling us what to do, right?
Yes.
That's the part where I'm like, okay, that to me is not settling well. And then also, it seems like he just did it so naturally, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the part where it also ties in with the fear, but it's something that you don't even realize, where you're telling us, don't take this path, take this path, right? Like, who are you to tell us? But it's like he don't even notice that this path is completely opposite of your nationality, right?
Right.
Because Stokely Carmichael, his thing, it wasn't just, it was Black nationality. You cannot have white nationality and Black nationality at the same time. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So he is basically saying, in order for me to have that, you can't have that. Because your truth is opposite of my truth. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Absolutely. Like, all the stuff you're saying, like, Black people do not fit that. We're not violent. We're not, that's you, right? So it doesn't fit that. So that's what I'm saying. It's so in his mentality, and so in the mentality of just the system of how white supremacy is, you don't even notice that you're at somebody's funeral and you're still promoting white supremacy. Yeah, right. You're promoting.
That's that white man's burden. You've heard that white man's burden.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It comes naturally. It comes naturally to them.
That's how natural.
That's that white man's burden. They feel like they have.
That's what I'm saying.
So-called white.
And you know, he was like the first Black president. So
how do you say that?
Think
they used to call him that. They used to say that.
Disrespectful.
They used to say that though. They used to say that.
He feels like it's his job to steer us in the right direction. All you've done is steered us into destruction. So how are you to tell us?
And that, I get exactly what you're saying. And that brings up another example, because Black people are the one that gave him the idea that he can be like that he can be that he can be the voice of Black people and listen, because you have so many groups of Black people who allow him to be that. But to your point and everything about this, is like, it's always hypocritical at the end of the day for a white man to tell Black people how they should manage themselves or how they should think about how society is. It's always hypocritical when all the things that you all have done, and you go hard, or anybody tell you guys how to run yourself and manage yourself as a race. But of course, he didn't think about it deeper. It was natural. It came out of his mouth. So they always think that they could tell Black people how to think. But let's face it, that's exactly what they've been doing. Again, the integrationist thinking might not have won had not white people killed off the nationalist thinking. Literally killed off the nationalist thinking. They allowed integrationism to manifest or keep going forward. They allowed it. Yep. And some people will argue, some people will say the integrationists, some Black people will argue with you that the nationalist thinking failed. It did not fail. It was assassinated. Remember that. The nationalist thinking was assassinated. And I believe they would have won because it made sense. Do your research, people. Do your research. Think about, look at the two sides and what's going on. The nationalist thinking makes sense. Look at what we're trying to do. We want to talk about circling Black dollars. We want to talk about owning our own businesses. We want to talk about having our own way of life and our own society, our own self. That's all nationalistic. Yeah. So the nationalists made the best argument.
Denying.
For us, because that's what we're trying to do. So, if you think about it at a deeper level, you have to know that this is not working. And I'm going to just lay with this. I'm going to just say, I think a lot of the frustration we see as a people right now we're dealing with, is because we're seeing the failure of the integrationist thinking and ideal. The integrationist ideal is failing. It's failed. And that's part of the frustration. Maybe I'm the first to say that. I mean, but heard anybody else say that. But I think that's definite what we're going through in this year, 2020, the failure of the integrationist. Obama was supposed to be something. We lived long enough to know what we're supposed to get after having a Black president, and we still ain't got that. They failed. It's time for something new.
Well, he was blackballed, actually, I think.
He was blackballed, but he also was not radical as he promised. He promised.
He served the purpose for white society.
Well, he portrayed himself more radical than what he ended up being.
Yeah.
So I feel like we were sold a bill of goods. False.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
No different from when Thurgood Marshall became the first Supreme Court judge and all that. It's the same cycle over and over and over again.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
So again, that's the PM Hour. Of course, we go on with discussion. Make sure you subscribe to us, follow us on Anchor, and you know where to find us. That's the PM Hour. All right, people.